Hello, this is Mark Tucker,
And this is Alan Firstenberg, and we are Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Hello, Alan.
Hello, Mark. How's it been going?
It's been going well. Things are moving along. Just lots going on, but
Always
lots
seems
of
to be,
some new announcements too. So that's cool.
yeah, always seems to be lots going on. I feel like is an awful lot to keep up with and keep track of, and it's really, really difficult.
Yep.
Just even in the general conversational AI space, but then trying to figure out what does it mean for developers
Yeah.
is really, really hard. And I feel like this is going to be one of those conversations. So you want to explain what we're talking about?
Yes. So there was at the Google Devices event, there was some talk about Bard. Well, there's been talk in before that about Bard and different things, but specifically Assistant with Bard. So Google Assistant on your phone integrating with Bard
Now,
as a kind of as a helper slash assistant to the
yeah,
assistant. I don't know.
an interesting angle there. Now, some folks who follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter X may have noticed that I posted a part of a prediction that I made a couple of weeks ago. And I posted it separately. And in it, I say it would be really interesting if they paired Bard with Assistant at the event.
Right.
It was about a 30-second clip or so. But I didn't show the rest of what we recorded. And it's a little different. So here's what you and I talked about a couple of weeks ago before the event.
Roll the tape.
So what I think would be interesting is Google has Bard. Bard now has first-party extensions. We don't know about third-party extensions yet.
Right.
But in the hardware event, and I'm recording this on Friday, September 22nd, at the hardware event on October 4th, it would be really interesting if they made an announcement like the Google Assistant now has a new companion whose name is Bard. So you'd be able to say things like, hey, Bard, and ask it to do something or ask it a question. Or say, hey, Google, talk to Bard.
Interesting.
And that puts you in the Bard conversation space.
So you could do voice prompting and conversations against your email, your calendar.
Right.
Interesting.
And more interestingly, they now have leveraged this brand, which is already on the web, which they've already been pushing, and using the same technology, which is pretty speedy technology. It's pretty fast. Yeah. In voice, and saying, this is your new voice companion across multiple platforms. Now, if they did that, that would be brilliant. But this is Google, and I don't think they will. So that's my prediction.
That's your prediction. All right.
Is that we will hear nothing. We may hear something about AI on October 4th. We're not going to hear anything nearly as grandiose as what anybody else is doing. That's my prediction.
All right. And nothing with Assistant and Bard.
No.
All right.
That's my prediction. And I hope I'm wrong. I so hope I'm wrong.
I hope you're wrong too. That would be really cool if they surprised us with that.
But I don't think I am.
So you can see I made a bold prediction there.
Yeah, you went out there. You made it clear what you were predicting.
Right. That
how do you feel about it now?
Well, I mean, on the surface, I was wrong. I mean, I was close on the name.
Yeah, definitely.
So what they announced was Assistant with Bard is the name of what it was that they announced, which is awfully close to what I predicted. But my second part of my prediction was that they weren't going to actually announce this. That it would be great if they. I think the way it would be great if they did, but I don't think they did. They will. Well, they did. So I was wrong there. But I feel like I have at least a partial win there. And there are a bunch of reasons why. I feel like the announcement itself, and there was a blog post that went with the announcement, and we're going to post links to both of these as part of the show notes. But everything was really, really light on details.
Yeah.
And especially when it came to what does this mean for developers, even later on details. So while, OpenAI, when they announced plugins, they gave the specification for how plugins were going to work.
Right.
When Alexa, a few weeks back, and we covered this on the show, when Alexa launched LLM integration with Alexa, they had diagrams and some discussion about what what a manifest header was going to look like. It was vague, but
Yeah.
they said straight out that they were going to have third-party integration with it. Did you see anything along those lines from Google?
I didn't. There were parts, because I actually went back and watched the Alexa event too, and so kind of the part where they demoed Google Assistant with Bard and the new Alexa LLM talking to a device and talking kind of the demo part of that. I rewatched both of those, and both of those they did stay fairly high level. They also said this was new. This was in the early stages. So I think they're both caveats from both companies. I do want to read a couple of quotes, one from the Alexa event and one from the Google event, which was kind of interesting because it's talking about when we first initially did this voice assistant thing, we had one vision, and then but technologically, that wasn't, we weren't able to fully fulfill that vision until today, is kind of was at least what I took from it. So the Alexa event, this is David Limp, and this is obviously has his perspective and slant on it, but he said, "I've often said that Alexa is the best personal AI out there, but I would tell you it's always been a little bit more transactional than we would like. But that was a limit of the technology, not the vision. And thanks to our latest LLM, you can now have a near human-like conversation with Alexa." So what they were focusing on was, the improvements. LLM was giving them improvements that were making this more conversational and a better experience with you interacting with your device. I'm not sure how to say the name.
I believe it is Sissy Cao, I think.
So the quote that she gave was, "We've always envisioned a deeply capable personal assistant should be able to do, but the technology to deliver it didn't exist until now." So it's kind of this, I think in a way, kind of accepting, or at least saying, we know that what we've done, so where things are right now are not quite up to expectations, and still early stages, but LLMs is going to make this a better experience.
That's really, it's kind of funny in some ways coming from the Google side.
Yeah.
Because it's Google saying we didn't have this technology till now, and yet Google had this technology for years.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's kind of, okay, fine. But I guess I don't know, what's frustrating me about it is that it feels like even now Google now has the technology, but they still don't get it. And one of the other reasons why I feel like they don't get it is at the same announcement, at this hardware event, Google made two other conversational AI announcements, which nobody seems to be talking too much about. The first is that as part of the Google Home app, you're going to be able to have a conversation with Google Home. So you'll be able to say things like, when was my package delivered? And it will be able to pull up the relevant video from your Nest camera and give you an answer.
Okay.
But that's not part of Bard. That's part of the Google Home app.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
things that you'll be able to do with fitness trackers and so forth is you'll be able to ask fitness questions in a conversational way. But that's not part of Bard. That's part of the fitness apps. So I feel like Google, it hasn't clicked for Google yet. They they have all of these different pieces.
Yeah.
And they haven't put it together themselves. And bringing this around to why we're having this conversation on a show for developers is they really haven't connected those pieces for developers yet.
Yeah, the information overall is light. They haven't really even talked about, are there going to be third-party experiences, that developers can do. There's even some question on the different paths that you can take with the Alexa LLM. Which of those are third-party experiences? Which ones are, which ones are
but at least
you can monetize and stuff. So yeah.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. When we talked about the Alexa LLM, I had a lot of questions that need to be answered still.
Yep.
A lot of questions. I don't even think I'm at the point of being able to ask those questions for the Google side because I don't see, I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. So like to go through kind of maybe some of the examples that they gave on the assistant with Bard, it talked about things like asking questions,
right.
which is something that both of them talked about, right?
But also, not just asking questions, but asking contextual questions. Being able to do things like take a picture of something and say, which of these is going to be the easiest trail for me to take?
Yeah.
And that's, combining language knowledge and visual context and context of what the words mean and what the trails mean and what, a bunch of other stuff. That's powerful and that's sophisticated. But Google can do all of that itself.
Yeah. And the fact, so, because they were talking about that kind of the input modes into Assistant with Bard was text, voice, and camera.
Yeah.
Right. So images. And they also talked about, it was like, give me a summary of my emails for the week.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh, that's right. It was, it was actually trying to find the plan. It was, search my emails for where we're going this weekend or something like that.
Yeah. So finding, I do like the idea of being able to use your voice to dig into your, emails. Kind of grown on me a little bit.
It grows on me a lot. I mean, that, I've been doing that for 10 years in a way. But I feel like they kind of skirted the line in talking about how much of this was going to be voice input. They hedged a lot of that. And but we'll get to that in a second. So the second thing that they did though was after searching your email for something was then sending a text.
Yeah.
And in some ways that was impressive, but it wasn't clear where Bard played into that.
Yeah, that's true.
And then later in the conversation they had, you've taken the picture of the dog and you want to post it to social media with a caption. So you drop the picture onto Bard and do something. And again, there was a lot of hand waving there. So it's not clear where the integration is and what integration there will be. So
yeah,
that's fine.
So, and the things that they talked about integration with was Gmail, Maps, Docs. What was the other one? And there was like generally talking about that there was integration with Bard and YouTube. So you would think that maybe somehow the things that Bard can do might grow, and you've been able to talk to Bard to get these things, to access to these things might be,
right. The suggestion is there, but there's no information. There's no follow through.
Not one of those seemed like it was a third-party experience or a potential for a third-party experience. It was deep integration into properties that Google already has.
Right. The closest they came was talking about posting a picture to social media. And since Google Plus has been shut down for a few years now, it's, not clear what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But that was as close as they got.
So, and there was, I think, wasn't there also a part like plan a menu for 10 people for the weekend, including smoothies or something?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yes.
All right. So I can see generative going on, just that's kind of a different form of generative as opposed to, opposed to answering a question. It's, creating, summarizing,
Right. That's the sort of thing that Bard does today, though. It doesn't require a third party for that.
So, everything that I saw was talking specifically about the phone. So
yes, well, and that's kind of my next point.
Yeah,
is, you said, talking to your email. Well, okay, but they really kind of made it unclear about what exactly was going to be voice driven and what was going to be keyboard and phone driven.
Yeah.
And it's especially notable that when talking about Assistant with Bard, they said the availability will be on Android and iOS. And
they did. And then they also talked about coming, kind of after like a within the coming months. So it doesn't sound like they were hinting that it was coming first to, Pixel 8 and so you might have to wait. So it might be Pixel 8 and iOS, but if it's iOS, then it's got to be an app. So it's not a deep integration.
It's not right. Well,
yeah.
Right.
So,
but I mean, I think that the big issue though is this isn't an ambient thing.
Yeah.
It's not going to be. This is in some ways a slightly different vision than what Alexa is talking about.
It is.
We're not talking about being able to use the smart speakers that we have, or, it's not even clear if we'll be able to use Android Auto. They literally, I don't know, they're ignoring a big chunk of what Assistant used to mean, and have really, really narrowed its scope.
Yeah, the suite of things available, like summarizing emails and things like that, I that's impressive to me as far as functionality. It's not something that's going to be easy for Amazon to do.
That's not going to be easy for anyone else to do. That's but it's also not impossible. That's true. Gmail has it has an API.
Right.
Google Drive has an API. All of these things have APIs. And it's not impossible for somebody to write that integration. One could argue you can't do the other way around. At least we're not seeing how.
Yeah.
And again, this is the developer focus here.
Yeah, which is hard because nothing really has gotten deep enough to the level to know what developers can do. So right now it's kind of like these are technologies that are interesting to learn about as developers and make sure you understand how they work, because some of it might, trickle down features might hit developers.
Well, but I mean, ChatGPT, the features are there. You can write plugins.
Yep, you can.
And, it's not hard to create even ChatGPT is talking about voice input on their mobile devices. That's there. It's not, what I guess kind of what the question I'm having as a developer is, what is Google offering as a developer that the others aren't? And right now, the answer is nothing at all.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're offering less.
So,
Mike, and it pains me to say that as a GDE, it pains me to say that. Well,
and as a company that has cloud offerings that have services that, that really there is a portion of Google that really caters to developers.
Yeah,
that it's a missing kind of a silent
Android spot. Android really caters to developers. Android has been all about, since day one, doing things for developers, having a very developer first, possibly not even user first attitude.
Yeah.
But you bring up an interesting point, and that's that one of the things that they announced with the Pixel 8 line is that it's going to have hardware support for some of the LLM models. And that's interesting.
Yeah.
To see how much of Assistant with Bard runs on device. A. And B, if so, what does that mean for developers? Who do we now have to build? Do we have to build differently if we detect an LLM support on device or not? What?
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
As developers, what is our interface to this? And the answer, we don't know what the answer is.
We don't know. So my question, because you said this, that made you think of a question. The question that I have as a developer is, where do I put my time?
Yeah.
Right now I can think, okay, I'm looking at this. I'm new to LLMs. I want something that's going to be voice enabled now. That is voice enabled now, or will be voice enabled soon. And as a developer, where should I focus my attention? Right now, if I go to Google, there isn't anything that tells me, anything to do. If I go to Amazon, there's a few page documentation with some diagrams saying it's coming and it's going to come in this way. You can bring your own APIs. You can bring your own data, both with Alexa's LLM, or you can bring your own LLM and work with Alexa. So they're at least kind of giving us this is the, zoom in where we can actually see the ground and we can see the
right. They're at least giving you plots. We've got some rough idea.
Some rough idea. Yeah. Or do you go to
ChatGPT, which is giving you the specifications.
That's already has this idea of plugins. People are already developing, plugins for it, and that's going to get voice in the future. So, yeah, it's just kind of like where do you experiment? Where do you put some energy as a developer to kind of progress your knowledge and your career and whatever to go forward.
Right, and the question is going to end up being what if we see this as an ecosystem and not just as a thing, which ecosystem has the better chance of living? What's the living ecosystem that I as a developer want to work in?
Yeah. And so that comes back down to that question of monetization. What can I,
Yeah.
But sure, you might enjoy doing some things for fun, but if you're seriously going to do stuff, then where can I sustain, make a living doing this thing? What ecosystem is thinking about monetization for developers?
Right. And right now, none of them seem to be.
Yeah.
From what we can tell.
Yeah.
Ay.
So there were a few other things I wanted to bring up about the Alexa event, just kind of completing some of the comparisons from this Google. They both talked about not only can you talk or tell the device to do things, I guess have a conversation. It's not just tell, it's also do. So they both talked about, well, what are the services and the APIs that we can interact with? There was even a diagram that says, Alexa, we've got the LLMs, we've got, services and APIs. We've got the ability to have personalized context, personalization, and then safety and security. That was kind of their, one of their diagrams. And some of the examples were actually even similar. Like there was one example of, talking about sports, what's my team doing? How does specific player do? Oh, there's a game on, this weekend. What's the weather going to be like? I'm thinking about having a barbecue. What would pair with chicken? Go ahead and write a message to invite my friends there. And then all that stuff was just done on the device. And then you hear the phrase, send to my phone. And so even though Alexa has the ability to make phone calls, and then there's still that part of it, that integration, or at least make calls to other devices.
It's still fascinating to me that Amazon hasn't made the Alexa app on the phone more of a thing.
Yeah,
I mean, it's there, and it's you can use it and need it for things, but it's not there in the same way that it is for other devices. It's not an APL
yes
app.
it could very well be.
I don't, but and it really, and it's interesting in the context of Google has shifted all their focus to the phone.
Yeah.
While Alexa seems to have almost none of their focus on the phone. And ChatGPT is still just lumbering along.
Yeah. So maybe you can answer this about ChatGPT, because I've always just used it on the web. Do they have mobile yet?
There is now, I mean, the mobile app is still relatively young.
Okay.
But from what I understand, it's a very, very good app. It does have voice input. It does have voice output. It's not quite the same as Assistant in Alexa. The impression I get is that it's still touch to talk, but I could be wrong.
All right, I'll have to investigate.
But it's there, but it's not treating itself like an assistant. It's treating itself like a chatbot still.
A voice input chatbot.
A voice input chatbot. Well, also voice output chatbot.
But yeah, because it's part of the thing that's great, especially for people that are vision impaired, is that you can start it up with your voice. You can get prompted on what to do. There's the the output, but then another prompt on what, back and forth. You can carry on this conversation without having to
do any, it purely a purely auditory conversation. Yes.
Yeah, it removes the friction.
Yes.
For that. The last part I wanted to bring up is because we talked about like kind of the modalities for input for Assistant with Bard was text, voice, and then camera, right?
Yep.
So this somewhat parallels, or at least is similar to some of the new features that are coming out in some of the new Echo devices, because they showed this ability when you go into the Let's Talk app, where you don't have to use the wake word. In fact, you can step away, carry on a conversation, step back, and continue talking to the device. And so they talk specifically about they're using acoustic models to determine where people are and kind of where the voice is going in the room. On-device visual processing. In addition to that, like head orientation. So, can we see their eyes or not see their eyes? Mm-hmm. Like, so, I'm talking to the device, I'm not talking to the device, I'm talking to the device, right? As well as just proximity analysis, like how close are you to the device. So they take all these things into account to kind of figure out who you're talking to, and trying to make it so that you can talk to people in the room, talk to the device, and have it all be part of a kind of more conversational.
And again, the question's going to come up: how do we as developers get access to any of this? Because one of the other things I remember us talking about was that it also would respond in the same vocal intonation as we've given it. So if we're, so, and I made fun of it at the time, of course, but, I said something snarky, but at the same time, developers will want access to the same thing. And I assume that Amazon is not going to give that information over.
Yeah, that is going to be challenging to know, that seems like a lot different, a more interactive, chatty, kind of almost like a WebSocket back and forth, sending this information, figuring out stuff, as opposed to, more of the here's the input, send it to the server, get the response, and come back.
But even if it's just send send what the user said to the server. Even if it's just speech to text, and that gets handed over to our skill. Alexa gets information about tone of voice and some sentiment analysis from how we're saying things, not just what we're saying. And I'm reasonably willing to guess that is not handed, that is not part of what gets sent over.
Yeah, definitely. I would think initially that's going to be the case, and then it depends on what.
Yeah, I can't.
What benefit they think that's going to have for them and users if developers have access to that.
So again, a lot of unknowns. Which is frustrating as a developer, but I guess we deal with it as we can.
But it's definitely, you can see like they're putting a stake in the ground and saying we are doing LLM.
Well, right? Yeah, I mean, I think if I thought Amazon was trying to run up a big flag and wave it saying, yeah, we're doing LLMs too, honest, then this week was Google sticking up a little flag going, we're doing LLMs with our assistant too, honest. I don't know. I mean, once again, I'd love to be proved wrong. I'm very sincere about that.
Yeah.
I would love to be proved wrong. I would love to see an API available to third parties. I'd love to see that kind of integration. I'd love to see Google coming out with guns blazing against ChatGPT and Alexa on this. I love the competition, and I love seeing what it drives everyone to do. I don't think Google has that vision, though. I just don't. But I would also love to hear what other people have to think.
Yep.
So, leave us comments below. You can find us on social media, and we love your take, and we will obviously be keeping an eye on this as things go forward. And I am sure we will be talking about this another time on Two Voice Devs.
Two Voice Devs. Take care, Ellen.
You too, Mark.